Good morning. I thank the organizers for inviting me to participate in the third edition of the Congress on Classical Education. My first thought when I listened to the piano concert was that we needed a long coffee break after the concert to be able to digest and enjoy the clarifying power of music. I came from Poznań. I'm a professor, but I'm sure I will not be able to sound as magnificent as the previous professor who played the piano, who introduced us to harmony and order of music, which is also called classical music. And it's not a coincidence. The genius of Frédéric Chopin that we could hear a while ago was able to enclose our local tradition in the universal. So everybody finds their place in the world on their own ways. And at the same time, we are anchored in the world of universalia. This is also the beauty of civilization. When Bach, Mozart, and Chopin were creating, there was a different Christianitas civilization capital. My speech is about Christianitas versus contemporary education. So let's think what it actually means, what Christianitas is. Speaking with the language of the Pope Benedictus XVI, this is something I refer quite a lot. Benedictus talked a lot about Christianitas civilization. It's about the civilization of happy synthesis, a civilization that was able to and affirmed unity between wisdom and faith, truth and freedom, goodness and beauty. And they drew the conclusions and consequences from those dichotomies. Of course, what is the area? What are the limits of Christianitas civilizations? That's something we should talk about. Where were the limits and borders of that civilization? So an answer can be taken from one of English historians. They said that the Latin language for liturgy and science and Roman architecture, especially Gothic architecture, and also places where we had universities and where there was the knight ethos. That was the definition of the range of Christianitas civilization. In reference to the Latin language, and the anecdote that the chairman has just told us, it reminded me of the important words in 1957 of our primates. He said that we could call ourselves a Roman nation because Latin was our second native language. Of course, that was a little bit of the context was important, right? The historical context was important, but I think it still remains universal and up to date. The civilization of happy synthesis, looking with the eye of a historian. I'm a historian, I'm not a philosopher or theologist. So maybe it's not a beautiful way of saying it, but it's like a byproduct of the evangelization work of the church, the Christianization that the church undertook throughout the ages, starting from the Saint Spirit. And when we look at culture and social life, and the fruit of victory of Christianism. So we can say that these are the pillars of civilization, Christianitas civilization. John Paul II also spoke about it very beautifully when he was in Strasbourg and spoke at the European Parliament in 1988. And the Council of Europe meeting a little before the Berlin War and the Iron Curtain fell, and he was reminding us the Christian foundations of Europe. Christianity carried into Europe by the Church was the foundation of our civilization, and John Paul II also enumerated the introduction of a person, of an individual into the discourse, because it was unknown before, the persona notion, and the Pope underlined that it was linked to some disputes that were, or even conflicts that were very fervent during the first centuries of Christianity, but basically that was the foundation of European civilization based on Christianitas. Another pillar, in 1978, the Pope has said that it consists of our faith in reason, demythologizing the world of nature and treating reason, ratio, open to the natural world as a gift from God that we should use, and but we should use it carefully with fear. However, it opens the science for us. The third pillar mentioned by John Paul II in 1988, was that our gift from Christianity was that we understood that it's impossible to build paradise on earth. There will always be poor people, as Jesus used to say. Paradise will not happen on earth. So the Christianitas civilization, the Christian civilization, is related to the program that we should not trust people who promise paradise on earth. These are the pillars of civilization according to John Paul II that were presented to us in 1988. And I really liked it. I also liked the brief way of presenting the same problem by the same person 10 years later in his encyclica Fide et Ratio. It's a document by John Paul II that has been since forgotten, systematically forgotten, together with other two documents that they are part of the triptych. It's about Christianitas. So this is Veritatis Splendor from 1993, Evangelium Vitae from 85, and the third one was from 88. So those documents are not discussed anymore. They are being forgotten. So I think it's a great opportunity to remind you of the Christianitas civilization as summed up by the Pope and its civilizational epos. He included it in the prologue, to wonderful, amazing prologue, the only one for this encyclica. Faith and reason are the two wings that carry human spirit into contemplating the truth. The God himself gave human hearts the wish to know the truth. And the final goal is to know himself, to allow people to know God and love God, and to reach full truth about ourselves. This is the prologue to Fide sed Ratio. It contains the best summary, according to my opinion, of the essence. Because here we are talking about the Christianitas civilization in the context of education, including the state of contemporary education. So please take that fragment of Pope's encyclica, the papal encyclical, so human spirit, truth, contemplation, God. All those are the key words that I enumerate according to the order they appear in that fragment of text. Looking at contemporary education and contemporary civilization, all of them are being rejected. this is the shortest way of responding the question included in the title of my speech. What is the relation between contemporary education and Christianitas? There is no relation, actually. Because civilization defined in this way, the Christianitas civilization, was not perfect, of course, but looking at the historical development, history of Europe has had centuries that were called by researchers the epoch of cathedrals and universities, 12th, 13th century. And the Latin Europe overlapped or corresponded to the range of Christianitas civilization, faith and reason. Europe, at the same time, in the 12th, 13th century, started to build universities. Before, we didn't know universities of this kind in Europe. And at the same time, cathedrals are created throughout Europe. They also combine faith and reason. They are an expression of faith and at the same time a great feat of human reason and science in the early stages. At the end of the 12th and beginning of the 13th century, the dogma about the truth of presence of Christ in the sacrament at the altar is described with the language of philosophy taken from the classical philosophy. Transubstantiation is a word taken from classical philosophy, and thanks to great masters of Christianitas civilization such as the Thomas Aquinas, it was used to describe the world of faith and the world of reason, the classical legacy. Fides et Rasa is also a document where Pope John Paul II wrote that it would be a contradiction of the plan of providence if we rejected our Greek and Roman roots, if we rejected antiquity, classical heritage, and philosophy, because it's a continuum. So that's why this document, Fides et Ratio, is an apology and a calling to look for references to that civilization that was at a certain point condemned to be destroyed. Referring to Benedictus XVI, the crisis that happened with Christianitas civilization was a crisis based on false dichotomies, false contrast and juxtaposition between faith and truth, faith and reason, good and beauty. So looking at the development, historical development of the stages of revolution, the changes in the civilization, we can see a pattern of false dichotomies. Benedict XVI, in his wonderful speech in Ratisbon in 2006, only a fragment of that speech was presented by the media, but he talked about the Hellenization waves when European civilization cut the links and roots with their Greek ancestors. The first wave, the first tsunami is a word of that I have introduced, not the Pope. It was Protestant. The first wave of that was when Protestants, Martin Luther, distrusted deeply the reason. Luther, with his followers, said that people of faith should not be people of reason, because reason leads us to sin. Dr. Luther, in his original writings, he used another word for Harriet, great Harriet, he wanted to use the notion of to distance himself towards adapting by the Roman Church the heritage from Greek philosophy, which happened in the works of Thomas Aquinas. And it's a proof, according to Martin Luther, that the Roman Church is a slave of the Antichrist because they use pagan philosophy and combined it with the Word of God, which he thought that he understood better. The second tsunami that damaged civilization, combining reason and faith and civilization of the Christianitas civilization, was the Enlightenment philosophy and the French Revolution that followed it. The so-called Enlightenment philosophers, they have a different approach.
Which means that a man of reason cannot be a person of faith. But it's the same in both cases, which means that those two wings will not fly together. What we're having next is another revolution. It was in the 19th century. There was the link between freedom and truth, which was broken. Liberalism was there, and this does not only stem from the liberalism, but also Kulturkampf was stemming from the French Revolution. Kulturkampf was all over Europe from the beginning of the 19th century till the beginning of the 20th century. Every time another phase of Kulturkampf, whether it was in Piedmont, in Prussia, in Portugal, in France, the first hit targets education by saying that there should be a division between the church and the state. What was removed was this religious dimension in the education area. This is a pattern that we can also perceive in Bismarck's Prussia and the Third French Republic. So everywhere where Kulturkampf was imposed in different manners, but it's also strict linked to the French Revolution, which stemmed from the period of Enlightenment. It's Georges Danton who was saying during the Revolution is that all children belong to the Republic. It's the Republic of the new French people, which were turning back to the old legacy and heritage. It's up to the Republic to educate, to bring up children, saying that, of course, the first year is 1972. Before that, there was nothing in France, because this was the introduction, the year of the introduction of the new revolutionary calendar. So please pay attention to the fact that if we are talking about the Republic, it would be up to the state, in fact, to have a monopoly over education. But it's not an ordinary state. It's like Saint-Just said, who would help Maximilien Robespierre, would be the Republic, which would be an ardent community. The Republic, it's not only the lack of a king, it's like a pare church, something that should educate, bring up a new human being. What we know very well is what said Robespierre is the rule of the virtues, and this was also inspired by Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the popular will. This is something was the core subject of that. It would be up to the state to decide about everything. And for sure, it wouldn't be up to the church or to the family to decide about everything. And this legacy, this heritage, was also taken over by Kulturkampf, and this brings us back, dates back to the beginning of the 20th century, where in 1910 the monarchy was abolished in Portugal, and this is a closure of all this because they were saying that they would divide and the church and the state, and all this has an impact on education, of course. So that's why we can say that here is the beginning of all the problems we are dealing with now. Let's remember the second part of the title of my presentation, which is contemporary education. Contemporary education, which to a great extent is rooted not in Christianitas legacy, but in revolutionary waves which had a great impact on education, on its dimension. Christianitas would see a human being as a compositum, which is composed of the body and the soul. That's why we aimed at, it would aim at integral education, making a link between intellectual aspects, the willingness and feelings, and the body of a human being. There are many experts present here in this room that know everything about it, and that's something that I am only mentioning here because I don't have time to enter into details, but I would like to refer to this capital of the Christianitas civilization that we refer to regardless of those revolutionary waves. One of the proofs that it has survived, that this Christianitas civilization has survived and it was good, is a Polish Romantic period, and one of its representatives was a well-known poet, Zygmunt Krasiński in Poland. He would give a definition of a noble man. A noble man, being noble, well, this is something that has somehow disappeared in our modern language, but this model of Christianitas-based education aimed at creating a complete human being, and that would be also a noble human being. Maybe it was unconscious, maybe it's the expression of the existence of this capital that Krasiński specified. But in 1846, he would send a letter to August Cieszkowski, the co-creator of the association, scientific association under the Prussia regime. He would give the definition what consists, what is this about to be a noble man. A noble man is a complete person who reminds about the past and anchors it in the present, has faith and believes in the future. He is against all those who want to cut themselves from the past and cut themselves from their mothers and ancestors. So those important quotations from this text, what he really had in mind by writing this. When we are talking about a poet who was foreseeing the future much better than his contemporaries, well, we can just assume with a high degree of probability that he could see all the ideologies that appeared in the future in the educational and other, such as academic areas, and they were translated into some scientific theories. But first of all, they were only trends which would lead to creating some feeble brains and voracious guts. So this ray of light that I can see here on the floor is creating a rainbow, and this refers to a couple of theories, a whole series of theories that are now present in the educational field, but they have nothing to do with science, in fact. So they are against reason and good faith. So by cutting ourselves from the past, this is something we should be warned about. We are now witnessing, of course, fortunately not here, not in Poland, but we are now witnessing what Renard Cesset, French historian, said is killing memory. Killing memory. He was the author of a great monography about the genocide in French Vendée region, and it was based in a great bibliography, and it fulfilled all the best scientific standards. But because of that, he was not accepted by the Sorbonne University anymore, because he wanted to follow the truth. He didn't want to turn his back to the past, which in the case of the French Revolution was really a bloody past. But killing memory makes the Europeans of the 20th century, as John Paul II wrote in one of his encyclicals, is that the Europeans seem to be people who do not know their heritage and tend to turn their backs to the past. This is all this cancel culture theory and the reconstruction of the past, which is really present, for example, in the US, in the scientific world. But this is something which is really wrong about the contemporary education, is to deny the past, deny what our ancestors have done. Is that the whole Christianitas civilization now, in fact, was hidden violence. This is what is said now. Now we can see that before our very eyes, it's not maybe so drastic, but we are now witnessing these processes of cutting off the past and turning our backs to our mothers. We are talking about Poland here. In fact, we are witnessing some reconstruction attempts, historical reconstruction attempts, so that we cannot recognize history anymore, to reject the most important category for Christianitas education, which is the good and truth. Now what counts is lying, and what is bad is also becoming important. We are talking about the past, our colonial empires, where we there's also the partition of Poland, a very good evolutionary step, because a lot of innovations were introduced, rivers were regulated, railways were built at that time, so the country was modernized. And then the Second Polish Republic, where there is a period of huge oppression, anti-Semitism, and the Second World War, occupation, and some bloody stains on the pages of history, but it's not about categorizing our occupants, but about saying that the Polish people took part in the Jewish genocide, and the Popular Republic of Poland this period. So it's about saying that this material civilization was something which is a good innovation. So abortion on request and so on. So this is seen as an aberration, of course, but if you took some publication of those trendy, writers, for example, who name themselves historians, this is what it looks like. But fortunately, this hasn't yet touched the curriculums and education and manuals, for example. But of course, it's a subject for a separate lecture. My experience concerning social consultations for establishing a new curriculum, for example, people asking why Thomas Aquinas would be in Polish manuals. It's like having another priest in a manual. What was Christianitas about? What kind of crises did we have? Well, this is what I was talking about briefly, but now it would be good to concentrate on our future steps so that we don't keep complaining. And we have among us representatives of different sectors and social groups which have been acting for years now in the field of education in order to introduce education towards Christianitas, in order to fly, to use those two wings in order to contemplate the truth, in order to know what is our supreme objective by introducing God and drawing from that all the necessary social and cultural consequences. About the social aspect, then, well, here when thinking about what is positive about this edition of the Congress, because the Congress itself, of course, as a meeting opportunity is already of great importance. But I would like to point out this aspect of building what the Polish primate Cardinal Wyszyński said that was the community of truth, or the solidarity in truth. His beautiful words that I, if I may, would like to quote. He said it during a conference on the 6th of November 1966. There should be a big category of people linked together by the community of truth, of telling the truth. This is a community which treats everyone with the truth. They don't look at other people because they are part of the community of truth. You don't concentrate on a human being because you concentrate on the truth. It's a wonderful community of truth stemming from the functioning of the human being. So also the original sin has a great importance here, although it's difficult to know the truth because of the original sin, but throughout the years, with the time, we are able to reach the truth. And this community of truth is something crucial because this is what we should concentrate on, and this is what this Congress and other initiatives are all about. They've been presenting this for years. It's about creating the solidarity in truth, the community in truth. Within our Christianitas civilization will not be able to just replicate it and exactly as it was, because it's not possible. Civilization changed, but what is possible is to get back to the history, as the poet said, so that we don't cut off the past from the category of time. So what we've seen recently.
So we have seen how the state cares about education. We can do different things. For example, take care of our language, Polish language, and also we are speaking about Latin language being introduced into the schools, which has also been discussed by people on their summer vacations, according to the anecdote of the chairman. So this is not just a matter for some narrow elites. When we try to systematize this, it's a way towards creating the foundations of a community of truth, which will be the best remedy to all the contemporary problems in the world of education that do affect the old world of Christianitas and will affect us in the future. So, systematic action. It's already present in different areas. There are plenty of initiatives and programs, some of those you represent, and they will bring the effects we desire. So the community of truth in contemporary times is a task, is a challenge, but at the same time it's the only way for our education towards Christianitas to be able to succeed in social and cultural aspects of our culture. Thank you so much.